Horror movies. It's that time of year, and we have four more hugely popular horror films that are based on true horror stories for this video. So turn on the lights, check the doors and windows, and grab your popcorn. We promise, no spoilers.
Let's dig into this.
1982's Poltergeist was so scary it helped get the PG-13 rating on films. The creepy story of a family living in a home haunted by violent spirits who were terribly interested in their sweet daughter Carol Ann. It was a huge hit and would be nominated for 3 Academy Awards. We all recognize "They're Here" instantly. The screenwriters of Poltergeist took a little story about popping bottle tops and objects moving and turned it into a terrifying blockbuster.
In 1958 in Seaford, New York, the James Herman family claimed paranormal activity was taking over their beautiful 5-year-old home. On February 3rd, Lucille, James's wife, and their 2 children heard popping noises from all over the house while James was at work. When they went to see what happened, they found bottles of all sorts with the caps off. Some were turned upside down and some were on their sides. James thought maybe it was a prank, so life went on.
But 5 days later, it happened again, and the next day, James actually watched as bottles moved all over and the caps popped off. He called the police. When they got there, more bottle tops started popping, but they could find no reason. Over a few weeks, lamps were pushed off tables and furniture moved or flipped upside down. Figurines and centerpieces were targeted. The police couldn't find absolutely no reason for what was happening, except that the items they dusted with powder to show fingerprints or pressure of them being moved, items that moved before, didn't move when they had the powder. James had a priest come to bless the house on February 17th. It didn't stop what was going on.
The story was so creepy it made all the papers. Soon Life magazine did an article. Reporters descended on the house from Time magazine, the New York Times, Newsday, and even the London Evening News. Paranormal researchers were called in and documented moving objects and a few other odd occurrences. But the activity seemed to stop quite quickly once the experts set up shop. There were well over 60 instances of paranormal activity between February 3rd and March 10th, when all the phenomena ended. The Hermans moved away eventually, and no other paranormal activity was ever reported in the home.
Alfred Hitchcock's classic about thousands of birds attacking a California town was released in 1963. The film was based on a 1952 short story and not based on an actual event, because the event actually hadn't happened yet. But it did happen, and Hitchcock couldn't have planned it better himself.
On August 18th, 1961, with the film already in production, the strangest thing happened. The town of Capitola, California was attacked by birds, thousands of them. It started at 3:30 in the morning on a foggy day. People started to hear crashing and banging and birds screaming. When they opened their doors, they saw birds flying into buildings and dive-bombing houses. They went through car windshields and hit telephone poles. They also threw up half-digested food everywhere.
The sound was absolutely deafening and terrifying by all reports. A few hours later, it all stopped. It would take 50 years to discover that a neurotoxin produced by toxic algae caused the birds' terrifying self-destructive behavior.
When Hitchcock heard the story, he contacted the local paper and asked them to send him a copy of their article. He also told them he would be using the story in the film he was making. The first-hand accounts of the bizarre night the birds attacked Capitola Couldn't have come at a better time for this classic. One of my favorite horror films, The Mothman Prophecies, was not a huge success in theaters or with critics. Released in 2002, the story about a journalist who finds himself drawn to the small town of Point Pleasant, West Virginia, where strange events and a strange creature add up to a scary obsession, has jump out of your seat moments you won't forget. The film claims to be based on actual events that happened in Point Pleasant, West Virginia between November of 1966 and December of 1967.
One day in November of 1966, several men were digging a grave about 500 miles from Point Pleasant when they saw what they thought was a man flying. Then, on November 15th, 1966, two young couples reported seeing a terrifying man-sized creature with red eyes and wings that flew very fast at the local munitions plant. One couple said the creature followed their car, no matter how fast they drove to try to get away from it. Two firefighters reported seeing a huge bird with red eyes around the same time. Newspapers carried the story, and more folks started to talk about having their own encounters. One man even said the creature took his dog from a field. Over 100 reports of the Mothman in Point Pleasant were recorded.
And then on December 15th, 1967, the Silver Bridge collapsed into the Ohio River at Point Pleasant, killing 46 people, and everyone started wondering if the Mothman was connected to the disaster. Some believed he was trying to warn people that something terrible was going to happen. Others believed he caused the disaster.
Mothman creatures have been reported all over the world and often associated with disasters. But he was never seen in Point Pleasant again. Well, except for the statue outside the Mothman Museum downtown.
The original Amityville Horror was a huge hit in the summer of 1979. The story of a family moving into a home where a mass murder has taken place and haunted by malevolent and violent forces was terrifying. The real story it was based on was just as horrifying.
The Amityville Horror was based on a book by the same name about the Lutz family, who had lived in the house. They reported experiences including nightmares, being physically attacked, furniture moving, and bizarre odors and black ooze in the basement. After 28 days in their new house, things were so bad they left everything they owned in the house and never returned. The Lutz's claims have mostly been debunked in the years since the book was released. But the story of the mass murder just 1 year before they moved in is all true.
Ronald DeFeo Jr. was 23 years old in 1974. On November 13th of that year at 6:30 p.m., he stumbled into a bar in Amityville, yelling for help and claiming his parents had been shot. Several people followed DeFeo to the house and found Ron DeFeo Sr. and Louise DeFeo, both 43 years old, dead. The police arrived and found 6 members of the DeFeo family lying face down, dead on their beds. Ronald and Louise and their children, Dawn, aged 18, Allison, 13, Mark, 12, and John, aged 9. All had been shot with the same rifle. Ronald DeFeo Jr. was taken to jail for his own protection after claiming a hitman killed the family.
It turned out there was no hitman. Ronald DeFeo Jr. confessed to killing his entire family the day after their deaths. He claimed he heard his family plotting to kill him and decided to shoot his parents. He reportedly said he couldn't stop once he started killing. He also reportedly dumped his bloody clothes and the rifle on his way to work. After his confession, he promptly asked how to get the payout from his father's life insurance policy. A known heroin and LSD user, DeFeo's lawyers claimed he was insane. On November 21st, 1975, DeFeo was found guilty on 6 counts of second-degree murder, and in December, he was sentenced to 6 sentences of 25 years to life. He was sent to the Sullivan Correctional Facility in Fallsburg, New York.
Over the next 47 years, DeFeo would give several interviews. and changed his story almost every time. He said his sister Dawn killed their father, and his mother killed all the children. In 1990, he claimed he was married at the time of the killings and was in New Jersey with his wife and child. Turns out that was all a story to try and get his conviction overturned, and he had married the woman several months before filing the paperwork. They were divorced in 1993. All appeals and parole requests were denied. He died on March 12, 2021, at 69 years old. The cause of his death has not been released. Well, there you have it. 4 more horror films based on real-life horror stories. We hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
And we'll see you on the next one. Maybe.